the story is always about guns. The people are bad. This guy's a bad guy. If I could take my gun off right now and I lay it on this counter, nothing will happen. It'll sit there. But as soon as a wicked person grabs a hold of that handgun and starts shooting people with it, there's the problem. The problem is the individual.
That was Jacksonville County Sheriff T.K. Waters, making clear what everyone but Republican extremists already knows. It's far too easy for radicalized nutcases like Florida's white supremacist gunmen to gain access to an armory of deadly weapons. And before you all pop off in the comments, I agree with the sheriff. On its own, a gun isn't going to jump up and shoot somebody. But what our country has done is exactly the same as a sheriff leaving his gun unattended on the table. And we can measure the results in an unprecedented number of dead bodies. Meanwhile, over on Meet the Press, Vivek Ramaswamy took the tragedy in Florida as an excuse to blame Democrats for mass shootings. What?
There are more race-based violent crimes on the right than on the left. Why is this a lot more pervasive on the right?
Well, the fact of the matter is, I think that there's a lot more violence that's also pervasive in parts of the country that supposedly are left-wing voter bases. So I don't think this is a left versus right issue, and I don't think we should try to politicize this through partisan goggles either, Chuck, especially in the wake of a tragedy like this one. The fact is there are more black men dying on the south side of Chicago.
Do you ignore the elements that allowed this manifesto to spread online?
Sorry, Vivek, but I think the guy who politicized the Florida shooting was the guy who painted swastikas all over his gun before sending out an anti-black manifesto to all of his friends on 4chan. Maybe Democrats aren't the people you should be vilifying here.
Well, the fact of the matter is I do think we have two standards that we're even applying if we're having a conversation about manifestos. We still have not yet even seen the manifesto of that transgender shooter in Nashville of a Christian school, and yet here we're focusing on the motive. So if we want to look at this through a politicized lens, let's look at what the political media and the political establishment is doing differentially in how they analyze different crimes and then create a new narrative around it.
Okay, let's break this down because this really gets under my skin. First off, law enforcement investigating the Covenant School shooting in Nashville have said it isn't even clear the shooter was trans, so maybe listen to the police instead of some idiot on Meet the Press. And second, police as a rule don't release the manifestos of shooters, for the very good reason that that inspires other shooters to seek out fame. We know about the Florida shooter's manifesto because he published it online, and that's true for almost every mass murder manifesto we have. Back in Florida, Ron DeSantis tried his best to comfort a grieving community. Didn't go well.
Well, thank you for doing this. I want to just say to the councilwoman, I got you. Don't worry about it. We've already been looking to identify funds to be able to help make sure there's adequate security for Edward Waters College. We are not going to allow these institutions to be targeted by people.
Yeah, those people are all shouting down Ron DeSantis so loudly that he actually just gave up and quit talking, which is probably best, given that Ron DeSantis is a big reason why Florida has become so dangerous for black people. But DeSantis wasn't done, and instead of taking the hint, he just went to a place where the public isn't allowed and gave this bizarre speech, which seems to be at odds with his own policies as governor of Florida.
Perpetrating violence of this kind is unacceptable, and targeting people due to their race has no place in the state of Florida. Casey and I extend condolences to the victims and their families on behalf of the entire state of Florida. I've spoken with Jacksonville Mayor Deegan, Sheriff Waters, and President Faison from Edward Waters College. We will work with Dr. Faison to ensure the college has adequate security, just like we've done when our Jewish day schools have been receiving threats.
So let's be clear. It's not okay to target people based on their race in Florida, unless you're stripping books about civil rights out of libraries or banning black history from public schools. Gee, it really makes you why so many white supremacists find their way to Florida. Florida has been engaging in anti-black politics for the entirety of Ron DeSantis' governorship. That's one reason why the NAACP issued a travel safety warning there for black people, urging them to avoid the state entirely. Now we see why. Republicans can't truly condemn white supremacy because they know that would eat into their radical right-wing base. And both DeSantis and Ramaswamy know that you can't beat Trump by alienating the white supremacists who love him. So once again, the right is resorted to lying about its own responsibility for violence while trying to blame our most vulnerable communities. That's disgraceful and disgusting. It's also straight out of the GOP playbook. And if you thought that was wild, check out this video, where a Georgia Republican elected official threatens bloodshed if Donald Trump is convicted.
And I hope and pray it gets resolved before we use guns.
And as always, leave a comment below so you can let me know what I should cover next.